Today on the stand, we have a man who was truly the only qualified leader in his home. The only person who really knew what was going on and had any idea of how to improve the lives of people around him, but sadly wasn't given the chance to do so, thwarted from bringing peace and prosperity by a greedy, lying thief and his magical slave. The sadness of his tale has already been revealed in the wonderful performance Twisted by Team StarKid, which also comes to the defense of many others who have been unjustly accused. Today, honored members of the court, I plead to you on behalf of the one and only Jafar. Jafar is a vizier, an advisor to royalty, surely a position of great power, if that royalty actually bothers to listen to a thing you say. But unfortunately, that really isn't the case here. The Sultan was a fat, lazy, childish idiot who spent his time playing with toys and chasing shiny things rather than actually ruling his city. But that doesn't mean that Jafar was able to make the rules either, with such an absent monarch. No, it mostly seems like the majority of power was in the hands of the guards, who were cruel and vicious to everyday people, including trying to murder children for just trying to eat. There's an obvious poverty problem here in Agrabah, but considering the princess and future ruler of the entire land doesn't even know what money is, that's no surprise. I understand that at the time, women generally held very little actual power, so it'd be more her husband who ruled rather than her, and he would be the one who would really need to understand finances and all, but come on. She lives in an opulent palace with a pet tiger that regularly tries to eat her suitors, which seems like an act of war, and yet doesn't know what money is at all or the concept of payment. The Sultan never once complained about the cost of paying for all the things her tiger destroys, including people, or those exotic songbirds that she just releases who are clearly not native to the area and probably died. I mean, they're not near a forest or anything, and starving street cats gotta eat. Jafar can see all the suffering around him, all of the problems that are so very prevalent in the land, and he can't do anything about them with the Sultan so checked out of everything, and the princess just whining about how hard her life is as she sits on a plush velvet cushion and has everything she could ever want brought to her on a diamond platter. He tries, clearly, talking to the guards and trying to get them to handle some everyday problems on the streets like thieves, but as far as infrastructure and making the kingdom a better place to live for the poor and giving them chances to raise themselves out of poverty, his hands are tied. So, he seeks out a way to get that power for himself. First, through marrying the princess. She'd be a terrible wife, clearly, but if he married her and became Sultan, then he would have the power to make actual changes and help the poor people of Agrabah. He could bring education, clean water, and safe homes to the people. Make sure that every family has food on the table, whether rich or poor. Now, admittedly, his methods may have been somewhat unethical to some, but really, what else could he do? Let's look at the accusations, shall we? The crimes he stands accused of are betraying the crown, hypnosis of royalty, enslavement and attempted enslavement of royalty, inappropriate conduct with a minor, attempted regicide, improper use of magic. For convenience, let's lump betraying the crown and attempted regicide together. Now, these may seem like truly awful things, but when the people in power are completely useless and make life worse for everyone who lives beneath them except the ultra-wealthy, a thing that I'm sure no one in today's day can relate to with agonizing familiarity, is it not the duty of those with the ability to do so to remove them from power and put the reins in the hands of someone who can lead more effectively? Was it not Jafar's duty, as a man with the weight of Agrabah's welfares on his shoulders, to remove the obstacles to helping people from his path so he could pave a better future for every man, woman, and child currently suffering? I say that no matter what kind of divine right or whatever else people think their leadership has, if the leaders can't lead with the people's well-being as their primary concern, they are no leader at all, and should be removed from power by whatever means necessary. Jafar was acting to help the people as a whole, and no one should fault him for that. A few people seem to have objections to one of the main methods Jafar used to try and enact changes, namely by hypnotizing the Sultan using his magical staff. But, come on, what else was he supposed to do? The Sultan can't sit still for 5 seconds to listen to anything sensible. If he doesn't have something shiny being dangled in his face every moment, he loses interest and wanders off to cause problems somewhere. I'm guessing with the general lack of education and medical care it seems Agrabah suffers from, they didn't really have medications for his severe lack of attention span. I hate to see what his attention span would be like if he had access to TikTok. Ugh. Hypnosis was basically the only way Jafar could get him to sit still long enough to discuss anything worth talking about. Really, if anything, the hypnosis was an attempt to mitigate the Sultan's own mental shortcomings. Hypnotherapy had been used for a very long time to different degrees of success for many different issues. You can't blame the man for using whatever methods he has at his disposal to try and help the leader be more effective. True, Jafar did put them both in chains, but what else was he supposed to do with them? Throw them in the dungeons where someone could break them out and stage a coup? Execute them? Well, the latter maybe, and that does come up later. But for the most part, I think he merely wanted to keep them within his sight so they couldn't go off and start more problems when he's just barely starting to get things under control. This one is tricky, both because of the typical practices at the time and because of the circumstances and the actual actions that were taken. Jasmine, being the Sultan's only child, is the ticket to the throne, and Jafar needs to be on the throne to enact changes. So it doesn't matter if he doesn't actually want to marry her or not. The easiest, most effective, and clear path to taking power is to marry her. Yes, they do have a massive age difference, which the Sultan comments on, but that's not exactly uncommon for the time period or location. Even today, massive age discrepancies are fairly common in marriage, with young women or girls often being married to much older men. I'm not saying I approve of this in any way, shape, or form, just that it's not exactly rare. Jafar did at least want to make it easier on Jasmine. If she married him, she wouldn't have to deal with all the annoying suitors, and he did try to have the genie make Jasmine fall in love with him. If she loved him, regardless of his actual feelings, then she would probably not mind being married to him and might even be happy, getting to live her life peacefully married to someone she loves while he cleans up the huge mess her and her father have made of the kingdom. Also, I would like to note here, she kissed him. Side note, inappropriate actions with minors are never acceptable regardless of circumstances, and any adult who knowingly conducts themselves in such a way with children should be taken out back and roasted on a spit with their burned corpse hung from a flagpole as a warning to any others who might be disgusting enough to try something similar. Thank you. When using marriage to ascend the throne was off the table, his only other option is to get rid of the current rulers entirely. This has been how power has changed hands many times in history, and somehow still happens today, even as much as people want to think of all of that being in the past. Destroying a political opponent, quite directly, much of the time, is how lots of people became kings or lords. Many kings were just warlords who conquered enough territory and people through violent means that they could just call themselves whatever they wanted and wear whatever stupid headgear they felt like. Who's going to tell the guy who has destroyed armies that his hat looks silly? No one who wants to keep their head where it is, that's who. If the only way he can help anyone is by removing the useless leadership, well, his hands are a bit tied, aren't they? Who exactly decides how and when magic should be used? The genie uses it for basically whatever he feels like, whenever he feels like, and No one complains about it even when he's turning animals into all manner of unnatural things, or causing all kinds of problems. The fact that Jafar's magic looks a bit more sinister isn't his fault. That's just what it looks like. I tend to favor darker colors myself, and when I'm making a plush to give to one of my neighbor's children, they often take the forms of less loved animals like bats, wolves, or bears. That doesn't make them any less comforting or lovable for the children, does it? Of course not. Just because something looks dark and sinister doesn't mean it is. So, he might have used magic to launch a part of the palace to the northernmost reaches of the world with the lying thief inside. Well, what would you have done? Let the thief stick around and keep causing trouble? He was in the beginning stages of securing everything. He couldn't have a troublemaker like that around. I ask you, people of the jury, what you would have done in his stead. Watching everyone around you suffer, seeing starving mothers with skinny children in the streets, trying their hardest just to survive, while the fat sultan and his spoiled daughter surround themselves with more and more lavish wastes of gold out of pure boredom and don't even understand how money works, completely unaware of the suffering that surrounds them. In most kingdoms, the areas immediately around the palaces tend to have high-class nobility living there, but you have the slums and the poor right up against the palace walls. What does that tell you about the financial state of things? There seems to be only two classes in Agrabah, the obscenely wealthy royalty, and everyone else living in slightly different levels of poverty. Anyone who wants to correct that is a hero in my book. I declare Jafar, Vizier of Agrabah and the only one to actually take notice of the issues and try to solve them, not guilty.